Today we're diving deep into a topic that I know resonates with so many of you. Now, let's start by understanding the very essence of our daily existence. As you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that happens? Your mind starts churning, right? It starts pondering over problems, challenges, and worries. But here's the thing, you're diving straight into the past. Your brain is this incredible record of your past, and the moment you begin your day, you're essentially living in yesterday. You see, each of those thoughts, each of those memories is connected to people, places, and emotions. Emotions are like the soundtrack of your past experiences. So when you recall those memories, you're not just remembering, you're feeling. And more often than not, it's not a happy dance, it's sadness, it's pain. And here's the kicker, your thoughts and feelings shape your state of being. So guess what? If you're stuck in the past, your future is basically a rerun of the familiar past. Your past becomes your predictable future. And this is where the magic, or lack thereof, of manifestation kicks in. Now, most of us have this routine. We wake up, grab our phones, check messages, scroll through social media, and suddenly we feel connected to everything known in our lives. But here's the kicker. We're operating on autopilot, following the same routine day in and day out. It's like we've surrendered our free will to a program. And here's the kicker. It's not some external force doing it. It's use creating a subconscious program. By the time we hit 35, a whopping 95% of who we are is a memorized set of behaviors, reactions, habits, attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions. We've become like living computers, running the same program over and over again. Now let's talk about change. Most people wait for a crisis, a trauma, a disease, or some life-altering event to decide it's time for a change. But why wait? You can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can do it in a state of joy and inspiration. The choice is yours. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of making those changes. It all starts with getting beyond the analytical mind. Meditation, my friends, is the key. It's not just about sitting cross-legged and chanting Om. It's about teaching your brain to slow down, to enter the operating system where real change happens. Most people spend their lives in survival mode, living in stress, anticipating the worst based on past experiences. They're literally selecting the worst possible outcome and embracing it with fear. It becomes an addiction. The rush of those negative emotions becomes a comfort zone. And here's where it gets interesting. Your body is your unconscious mind. When you recall a past event and feel the associated emotions, your body doesn't know the difference between the past and the present. You're essentially reprogramming yourself for the same emotional states. So, when it comes to change, it's not just about what you consciously think. It's about reconditioning your body to feel a different way. The body often becomes the master, overpowering the conscious mind. Stepping into the unknown becomes scary because it's uncertain. But remember, the best way to predict your future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. Let's talk about thoughts. What thoughts do you want to wire into your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate? The power of mental rehearsal is immense. When you mentally rehearse an action, your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So why not install the neurological hardware in your brain as if the event has already occurred? You're not just creating a record of the past, you're mapping the future. And with consistent mental rehearsal, that hardware becomes a software program. You might just start acting like that happy person you envision. Now, here's the tricky part. Teaching your body emotionally what the future feels like ahead of the actual experience. You can't wait for success to feel empowered or for wealth to feel abundant. It's about conditioning your body to align with your vision. And here's a gem for you. Your personality creates your personal reality. How you think, act, and feel. Change any one of those, and you change your life. So let's break it down into actionable steps. Disconnect from the noise. Take time out of your busy life to disconnect. Turn off your phone, shut down the TV, power down the computer. Sit down, close your eyes. Let's take a journey together. A journey within where the magic of transformation happens. It all begins with a simple yet profound step, centering yourself. Imagine this. Take a few deep breaths, let the air fill your lungs, and exhale slowly. As you do, bring your attention to the present moment. Close your eyes if you wish. Feel the sensation of your breath, the rise and fall of your chest. This, my friends, is where the magic happens. Now let's ponder a crucial question. Can you be defined by a vision of the future instead of memories of the past? Take a moment to reflect on what you truly want in your life. It's not just a fleeting thought, it's a deliberate exploration of your desires. This is about creating a vision that becomes the guiding light for your journey. As you delve into defining your vision, consider the emotions associated with that future. What do you want to feel? Joy, abundance, love? Decide on these emotions and make a commitment to teach your body what that future feels like. It's not just about thoughts, it's about emotionally navigating towards the reality you desire. Don't rush. Let these emotions permeate your being before you take the next step. Now let's talk about mental rehearsal, a powerful tool in the manifestation toolkit. Close your eyes and imagine who you'll be when you open them. Envision the choices you'll make, the actions you'll take, and the steps you'll embark upon. It's like creating a mental blueprint for the life you're stepping into. Review this blueprint repeatedly, embedding it into the fabric of your mind. Here's a truth that might set you free. You can't journey to the future if you're clinging to the biology of your past. It's time to let go. Identify the thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that anchor you to the past. Make a conscious decision to release them. This act of liberation is essential for your evolution. All right, let's delve into the realm of body conditioning. It's like sculpting, but for your entire being. Imagine it as a daily ceremony, a routine that becomes as essential as your morning coffee. It's not just about routine, it's about making it a non-negotiable part of your day. Consistency is the magic wand here. When you commit to this daily practice, something extraordinary unfolds. It's not just about thinking differently, it's about your body getting in sync with your thoughts. Your mind whispers, "Let's create something amazing today." And your body responds with a resounding, "I'm ready." Picture yourself as the architect of your reality, sketching the blueprints with each intentional thought and emotion. It's a masterpiece in the making, and you hold the paintbrush. Day by day, stroke by stroke, you shape a world that mirrors the grandeur of your imagination. Now, as we draw this discussion to a close, let's touch on the concept of dangers, the lurking shadows that can cast doubt on being present, expressing love, or trusting. These threats only thrive in a world where survival reigns supreme. It's like they are remnants of an outdated script, trying to dictate the plot of your life. But here's the plot twist. It's time to break free from that limiting paradigm. Imagine stepping into a reality that resonates with your highest vision. Envision a world where love and presence aren't adversaries, but your steadfast allies, supporting you in every chapter of your journey. In this new reality, being present is not a vulnerability, it's your greatest strength. Love is not a gamble, it's the currency that enriches every interaction. Trust is not a risky venture, it's the solid ground beneath your feet as you navigate the twists and turns of life. So, as you embark on this journey of conditioning your body and mind, remember that you are rewriting the script. You are choosing a narrative where you are the hero, the creator, and the master of your fate. With each intentional act, you are sculpting a reality that aligns with the grandest version of who you are. Step into this world with confidence, for it is the canvas of your thinking equal to your familiar emotions. You keep reaffirming the same past experiences in your life over and over again. Our research shows without a doubt in the last 3 years that when students of our work combine a clear intention, now intention is a vision, a potential that already exists in the quantum field that you get to select. And when you ask yourself a question like, what would it be like to be healthy? What would it be like to be wealthy? What would it be like to be free or to be in love? The moment you ask that creative question, a part of your brain called the frontal lobe turns on. That's the crowning achievement of the human being. Once that area of the brain turns on, it's like a great symphony leader. It looks out of the landscape of the entire brain and it begins to randomly select different networks of neurons that are connected to the things you've learned in your life or the experiences you've had. And it begins to seamlessly paste them together to create an ideal, a vision, or an internal representation. That is a potential experience that's awaiting you. But it's not enough to just have the mind involved. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. Once you can begin to emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest, when you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, the freedom, the joy, the inspiration, the genuine love that you feel, or gratitude from that experience, the moment you do that, your body as the unconscious mind begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment. Now you're moving into a new state of being, into a new personality. And a new personality creates a new personal reality. The research that we've done shows that when we teach people how to regulate their internal states, to begin to create more coherence in their brain, and to generate elevated emotions like joy and gratitude and inspiration, that not only does the brain become coherent, but so does the heart. And when the brain is coherent, the heart is coherent. When the heart is coherent, the brain is coherent. And so why don't we live by these states on a daily basis? Primarily because the majority of the time that we live in our waking state of consciousness, 70% of the time, you and I are living by the hormones of stress. And living in stress is living in survival. And when you're living in survival, the very chemicals of survival cause you to function as materialist, defining your reality with your senses. You pay attention to objects and things and people. You begin to believe that your outer world is more real than your inner world. And the side effect of this over time begins to cause us to feel separate from possibility. Why? Because when you're threatened by some predator or some danger in your life, it's not a time to go in. It's not a time to trust the unknown. It's not a time to open your heart and feel love. It's not a time to communicate. It's not a time to create. It's not a time to learn. It's a time to survive. So then in order for us to create, we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to occur. And most importantly, we want you to understand when you're in the creative state and when you're not. And if you were to take a little time every day and apply some of the principles in changing beliefs and perceptions about yourself and your life, and what is a belief other than a thought you keep thinking over and over again? And all beliefs are based on past experiences. And in order for you to change a belief or perception about yourself and your life, you have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. And your body literally has to respond to a new mind. And when the choice becomes an experience that you never forget, that's the moment the past biologically no longer exists in you. People use the word victim so much, and I don't really think we spend a lot of time really unraveling the idea. But if I said to you, Jay, how are you doing today? And you said, well, I'm really upset because of this person or this circumstance or this condition in my life, then what we're saying, this is not conscious. This is an unconscious program. What we're saying is somebody out there is actually controlling the way I'm feeling and the way that I'm thinking. So if something out there is controlling your feelings and your thoughts, you're victim to whoever, whatever that is. Now, here's the challenge. The challenge is when things go really well, then you are feeling really good. But when things aren't going very well, then you're feeling pretty bad. So then the end result of that is that many people then become unconsciously reliant on something out there to change how they feel and hear. But if they don't understand that they're creating reality all the time and they're living in lack, in unworthiness, in separation for their whole entire life, waiting for the event to happen to take away their lack or emptiness, well, they'll spend their whole entire life wishing, wanting, waiting, hoping. And so then that creates further separation from things changing. So then the idea then is to turn that battleship around. Is it possible then that the way you think and the way you feel can begin to produce effects in your outer world? Now that isn't something that you swallow in one bite. It's a process of gaining knowledge. It's a process of practice. It's a process of experience. But once you start seeing those synchronicities, those coincidences, those opportunities that start to fall into place because you're experiencing change in your outer world, if you're doing the work, you're going to start paying attention to what you're doing inside of you that's producing the effect outside of you. And once you correlate the changes of what you're doing inside of you with the effect you produce outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did and you're going to do it again. And all of a sudden, you're going to start believing more that you're the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life. So if your thoughts and feelings somehow have an effect on your outer world and you're reacting to the same people at the same place at the same time in the same circumstances, then you're actually reaffirming the same reality because you're thinking equal to everything that you know. So that in order to change that, we have to begin to be greater than our environment. And being is how we think and feel. So when people begin to practice this, they're not so quick to give their power away to the person or condition in their life, because the stronger the emotion you feel from some problem or condition in your life, the more altered you feel inside of you, the more you pay attention to the cause. Well, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So you're giving your life force, you're giving your energy away to that person or problem that you could be using to heal, that you could be using to create a new future. So then teaching people then how to self-regulate and find the present moment and settle their body down from those unconscious programs or those emotions that they're conditioned to, that's the work. And so then when you start lowering the volume to those emotions and you're doing the work and mastering yourself in some way, as you begin to change your emotional state, you're not going to be thinking about that person or problem, and you're going to begin to take your power back. And that selfless reflection is going to be a consciousness that doesn't necessarily live in three-dimensional reality, because once energy makes it here, you're no longer bound to the three-dimensional reality. You're connected to a field. So vibrational match, all of a sudden your energy's at that point, and there's a door. And now you're going to get somebody who's going to, in your state of emotional freedom, in your state of your bliss or ecstasy or whatever it is, there's a perfect opportunity for a being that's vibrating at a similar frequency to begin to influence a person's future. But by the same means, if you can't get to that point and you're stuck, well then, there are beings that love to feed off emotions and feed off energy. And I've seen those too, because when a person finally gets beyond their suffering or whatever, they no longer can host on that person because they're no longer that emotion, that energy any longer. So then all of a sudden the person experiences a tremendous amount of freedom as well. And yeah, of course, now they're setting themselves up for something else. What I do know though, is that our intention really is to connect to the divine. Our intention is to become divine. Our intention is to open our hearts and trust again, to love again. Our intention is to teach our bodies emotionally what our future could feel like, to trade guilt and shame and resentment and jealousy and envy and competition for love. And we practice that in our week-long events. And once this center begins to open up, we're after coherence. So if you have a coherent heart and you're able to manage that and sustain the heart coherence, the field around your body begins to expand up to 3 meters wide. And that frequency, that coherent frequency, is like a Wi-Fi signal. You got a signal now. And at the same time, once energy makes it to the heart and it goes to the brain, and you teach a person how to create a coherent brain and be able to suppress the mechanism of the thinking neocortex, the memory bank of the known self, teach a person how to operate from their limbic brain and tune that pineal gland into frequency and allow that pineal gland to lock into a frequency, now you have a Wi-Fi signal as well. And it can read information. And these beings, I was doing this event in Florida, in Amelia Island. It was an advanced event, advanced follow-up. And this is people that have done advanced workshops. And the event was called Dream Time, that were up from 11 at night till 8 in the morning for the mystical. And if you don't want to do the mystical, don't come. But I'm going to be messing with your sleep. And I stay up the entire night. I'm watching the entire audience. And we're keeping them between worlds, between wakefulness and sleep, in that theta realm. And many people have very profound transcendental experiences while we're doing it. And I was trying to think of a way to explain this to the audience. And I had just finished the morning. I hadn't done my meditation. So I went into my room, I sat up, I did my meditation, and then I laid down. And when I laid down, all of a sudden, I see this beautiful fractal pattern with my eyes closed in the room. And the moment I see that fractal pattern, I know that that's order. That's information, a packet, a standing wave of information, and I sense it. I see it with my eyes closed, and then it unfolds like it rolls out on this beautiful being standing right next to me, and I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, and I say, oh shit, like holy, like whoa, and I hear it laugh, and it sounds like a symphony, like a harmony. In fifth dimensional creation, you are not going anywhere to get anything. Fifth dimensional creation has nothing to do with going anywhere to get anything. Because if you combine a clear intention, a coherent thought, coherent brainwave pattern with a coherent heart, moving into that elevated emotion, thoughts are electric and feelings are magnetic. The magnetism of this center becomes the energy. The intention is carried on that energy, and now you are broadcasting a new signature into the quantum field. Now, if it's done properly and you understand the mechanics, in fifth dimensional creation, you are not going anywhere to get anything. You are actually collapsing space and time, and you are drawing the experience to you. You are the vortex, because when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential that exists in the quantum field by tuning a radio dial, when you lock into that frequency, if you keep revisiting that energetic signature over again every single day, then you don't have to go anywhere and get it. The new job finds you. The new house actually finds you. The new relationship finds you because you are the vortex that's drawing the experience to you. My definition of creation is when I forget about me. I become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. I become pure consciousness, and the moment I reach that elegant moment of the generous present moment, all possibilities in the quantum field exist truly when our brain and body are in the present moment. Getting there is the work. So then, most people then create reality from what we call three-dimensional creation. Now, when you teach people how to take their attention off of matter, off of objects, off of a particle, and sense energy and sense space and pay attention to nothing, the moment they begin to open their focus, all of a sudden, their brain waves begin to change from beta to alpha. But not only just alpha, where the imaginary inner world starts to become more real, but very coherent brainwave patterns in alpha. So when you're under stress, you're trying to control that person, that thing that you're experiencing, your attention is shifting from one thing to the next. Turns out that each one of those things has a neurological network in the brain assigned to it because we've experienced it. So as you try to control all these things and your attention is shifting, you measure the brain. There's no coherency. The brain is very incoherent. Why is it important to have coherency? Well, because the moment you open your focus and the brain begins to acclimate, different compartments of the brain begin to unify. They begin to synchronize. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain. So when your brain is coherent, you're coherent. When your brain is incoherent, you are incoherent. The person, the maverick, who's willing to step out into the unknown. That unknown is the perfect place to create from, because only in the unknown can you create something new. And if you and I can become comfortable in that unknown place, then the best way to predict the future is to create it from that unknown place. Now, when people start crossing the river of change from the old self to the new self, because they're no longer thinking, acting, and feeling in the same way, there is literally a biological, a neurological, a genetic, a chemical death of the old self. And this dark night of the soul, this unfamiliar place, is the true value, the true step towards developing a new self. So then if we're leaving the old and we are creating the new, then the next most important question is, well, if I'm going to create a new self, what thoughts do I want to think? What behaviors can I plan? And as you begin to image and rehearse a new way of being, you are changing your brain and body neurologically and biologically. That's the neuroscientific model of mental rehearsal. Most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. And when it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment. The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories because it patterns or stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns. And then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. So we learn something new intellectually. We also cause networks of neurons to form. I mean, the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learn just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 300 connections to 2,600 connections. So if they didn't review that information or repeat it, the connections pruned apart. So we know then that learning semantic information begins to organize circuitry in the brain, and experiences enrich the brain. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. So if you take a thought, thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body, and how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. So if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say you have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, your attitudes are just shortened states of being. You feel good in the morning, you feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I know from the research that we've done that the redundancy of thinking and feeling and thinking over time, for example, a person has an insecure thought, then they feel insecure. The moment they feel insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. They fire and wire more circuits in their brain to feel more chemicals of insecurity, and then once they're feeling insecure, they think more insecure thoughts. And they do this over and over again. The redundancy and the repetition of that cycle over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind. Once the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. It turns out that 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are a set of habituations, unconscious thoughts, unconscious behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions that function like a subconscious computer program. So back to beliefs. An attitude are shortened states of being, and you combine them together then. Then a belief, then the cycle of thinking and feeling over time creates a subconscious state of being. I don't move past the word visualization because I think it kind of conjures up a little bit too much of a spiritual association. The word that's used in science is called mental rehearsal. In mental rehearsal, there's two types of mental rehearsal. There's what's called internal mental imaging, which means you're in the scene as the first person experiencing it. And then there's called external mental imaging, which is you're observing yourself in the scene. It turns out that when you are actually in the first person and not the third person, that action of rehearsing what you're doing produces the strong biological change. Now let's talk about this. You can take a group of people that have never played the piano before, and you can do a functional brain scan on them, and then you can teach them one-handed scales and chords, and they'll practice those chords 2 hours a day for 5 days. At the end of 5 days, they grow a whole new set of circuits on the opposite side of the brain. Well, that makes sense. You learn something new. Learning is making new synaptic connections. You get your body involved with some instruction. When you get your body involved, you're going to have a new experience. Experience enriches the brain. You pay attention to what you're doing. You've got to pay attention. You have to stay present. And if you repeat it over and over again, firing and wiring, you assemble new networks of neurons equal to your experience. Nothing new there, but you can take a group of people and you can have them close their eyes to a brain scan on them before the experiment. 5 days later, do a brain scan after. And for 2 hours a day, they mentally rehearse playing those scales and chords. At the end of 5 days, they grow the same amount of circuits in their brain as the people actually physically doing the exercise. So what's the relevance? Number one, when you're truly focused and you're truly paying attention, your brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. So the thought becomes the experience, and the brain looks like it's been playing the piano for the last 5 days, but they never lifted a finger. Now, from a biological standpoint, our brains are a record of the past. They're an artifact of everything we've learned and experienced to this moment. When we prime the brain to change its circuitry before the experience, now the brain is no longer a record of the past. It's now a map to the future. And so as we warm up those brain circuits, it's more easy for us to slip into a supernatural behavior. If you take those people and you set them from the piano, and they've never played the piano before, but they've been mentally rehearsing for the last 5 days, they'll play those scales and chords. Like magic, they just learned how to do it just by changing their internal state. Take a group of men, you can have them close their eyes, and for an hour a day mentally rehearse doing bicep curls over and over again, and they add an emotional component called harder, stronger, more intense, and they put themselves in that first-person internal mental image. At the end of 2 weeks, they have a 13.5 increase in muscle strength, and they've never performed the activity. Not only is the brain changed to look like the experience has already occurred, now the body has changed by thought alone. The body looks like it's been working out for the last 2 weeks, so then the power of mental rehearsal, of imaging, primes the brain and body to look like the future has already occurred. And when you set the extent of your limit and you can image what you can do even further than what's normal, then you are stepping into the unknown. And of course, then your body is going to follow your mind because the experience has already happened. You know, the challenge behind all of this is that people have to understand that there is a journey that they have to take. In other words, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, behaviors that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who we are is a habit, and it's programmed in the body to keep doing something so many times, the body knows now how to do it better than your brain. So if that's 95% of who we are, the body becomes the mind, and most of the time, people are unconscious.